Welcome back to the Deep Dive. If you're here, you're interested in getting to grips with big issues fast. And today, we're jumping right in. We're talking about something that's, well, it's everywhere. It's often overlooked. But it's reaching, frankly, alarming levels globally. And that's the experience of chronic pain among older adults.
It's an issue of just immense scale, and the sources you shared for this, they give us this incredible data-driven look at it. We're really focusing on this huge longitudinal study from the Lancet. It didn't just look at one place or one time, but, well, it analyzed data across 2 full decades.
And when we say huge, we mean it. The researchers talk about using harmonized data, which is a technical way of saying they took information gathered in slightly different ways.
Right, across 22 different countries.
Europe, Asia, the Americas.
Yeah.
And they made sure that all 212,904 of these adults, all aged 50 and over, were being measured the same way.
It gives you that true apples-to-apples comparison. It's so important.
And that's the key, isn't it? That harmonization. It lets us get past just seeing pain as, some individual misfortune.
Exactly. The goal here is to identify the high pain hotspots where we need to step in, and also to find the low pain locations.
The places we can maybe learn a thing or two from.
That's the idea.
Okay, so let's start there with that first big picture snapshot. When the researchers pooled everything together, all the countries, all the years, what did they find? What's the raw number?
The number that should really give everyone pause is 43.21%.
Wow.
That's the unadjusted pain prevalence. So just think about that for a second. It means almost every other older adult you meet, on average, is reporting chronic pain.
43%.
Mm-hmm.
That is genuinely staggering. But the study, it moves past that average pretty quickly, right? It shows that this experience is not uniform at all. It's more like a patchwork of different crises.
That variability is the real story here. I mean, even after they adjust all the data, the numbers are all over the place. At the low end, you've got the Netherlands back in 2006. They reported a prevalence of just 26.70%.
So about 1 in 4 older adults there, which is still high. But...
Yeah, it's manageable, yeah. But now compare that to the high end. France, in 2016, reported a prevalence of 59.2%.
59, so nearly 60%.
Right. We're talking about a situation where you're more than twice as likely to meet someone in daily chronic pain in Paris than in Amsterdam during that time. This isn't just a number. It represents a massive difference in quality of life, and it's almost certainly shaped by policy.
That contrast really sets the stage. It shows the gap between countries. But the real punch, I think, comes from the timeline. Are things getting better or are they getting worse? Which brings us to this idea of a global surge in pain.
And this is where the long-term data is just, well, it's pretty disturbing. We're focusing on the decade from 2006 to 2016. That's where we have the best cross-country data.
And the headline seems to be a health crisis that's getting worse, and fast.
It's a rapid deterioration, absolutely. Of the 22 countries they tracked, 15 of them, 15, saw a substantial, statistically significant increase in pain prevalence in just that one decade.
And how substantial are we talking? What's the average jump?
The average increase across those 15 countries was a spike of 12.01 percentage points.
Well, points.
Yeah. In just 10 years, the number of older adults reporting this kind of pain went up by about an eighth. It's a huge amount of new suffering, and it really suggests that, our health systems just aren't keeping up.
A 12-point jump makes a grim kind of sense, I guess, with aging populations and so on. But this is where the study gets really fascinating, because there was one massive outlier that completely bucked this trend.
That outlier was China. While 15 countries saw pain levels shoot up, China actually saw a notable decrease. A 6.60 percentage point decrease over the same decade. And this is so important because it proves that this global surge in pain, it's not inevitable.
A 6.5-point reduction, while most of the developed world is going up by 12. And given China's population, that's millions of people whose lives actually got better in this specific way. That can't be an accident.
No, it completely challenges the narrative. The researchers point to a couple of potential drivers. First, there was this massive investment in grassroots community healthcare.
So moving away from just big city hospitals to more local preventative care.
Precisely. And the second thing was rapidly improving standards of living, which meant better education for people who were just entering that 50-plus age group. And we know education is a huge protective factor, so it's better access to care, plus a stronger social safety net.
It completely reframes the whole issue. It proves pain is a policy outcome, not just, fate. You also mentioned that 6 other countries held steady. They didn't get worse.
Right. They achieved stability. So what this all means, for you listening is that when we see these huge swings, up 12 points here, down 6.5 there, the real mystery is finding the policy levers that are driving the change.
That's a crucial distinction. And it brings us to the next big finding. It's not just about how many people are in pain, but who is carrying that burden. Let's talk about the social side of this.
So across all 22 countries, the data showed three, let's call them classic predictors. These are the groups that were consistently more likely to report pain.
Let's run through them. What was the first one?
First, pain prevalence was generally higher among women. This is a pretty consistent finding in health studies globally.
And the second?
Secondly, those with less education, specifically people who hadn't completed high school. This is a really strong indicator for socioeconomic status, for physically demanding work, all of that.
And the third, I assume, is just age itself.
Yes, exactly. Those over 60 had higher rates than those from 50 to 59. So those three things, being women, having less education, and being in that older bracket, are the key global markers for vulnerability to chronic pain.
It makes sense that education is tied to risk because of those socioeconomic factors.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, why are we still seeing women so consistently affected across 22 very different countries? What does the source material say about what's driving that gap?
It's a great question. The study doesn't give a definitive why, but it points to this complex mix of biology, but also, and this is critical, gender roles and how healthcare is used. You have to ask, are women just reporting pain more accurately? Or are their symptoms being dismissed more often until they become chronic? The study really just highlights the sheer size of the disparity.
Which brings us to the inequality itself. The study created a specific metric to measure this gap, didn't it? The Pain Disparity Index. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. The Pain Disparity Index is basically a score that shows how unequal the pain experience is inside a single country. It measures the gap between the highest risk group, say an older woman with low education, and the lowest risk group, like a younger, highly educated man. A high score means pain is really concentrated among the vulnerable. A low score means the burden is spread more evenly.
That's a brilliant way to look at it, not just prevalence, but equity. And the fascinating thing is that this inequality wasn't static, it changed over time.
That's right, we saw huge swings. In some countries, like Spain, that disparity actually got wider over time. The gap between the most and least vulnerable grew.
So even if the overall pain level only went up a bit, it was being pushed more and more onto the poorest and least educated people.
Exactly. But then you had other places, like Sweden, where the disparity index was stable or even declined. It really speaks to the power of targeted social policies to neutralize some of those disadvantages. It shows you can decouple poor health from your socioeconomic background.
It gives us clear benchmarks. So let's look at the extremes. In 2016, which country did the best on this metric? Who had the lowest disparity?
That would be Denmark. In 2016, they had the lowest pain disparity index. They were the most equitable country. The burden of pain was distributed the most evenly across their population.
So the system was essentially buffering against that social gradient.
Precisely. And on the other end of the spectrum, the highest overall pain disparity index was in South Korea. And that contrast, Denmark versus South Korea, is just a profound case study in how social structure translates directly into health. South Korea's high score means pain was heavily concentrated in their most vulnerable groups.
It really hammers home the core idea, doesn't it? You can't separate pain from its social context. The numbers reflect societal success or failure.
Absolutely. And if we pull all this together, that's the main takeaway. The social gradient of pain is steep, but it is manageable. You just have to acknowledge it exists.
Which brings us to our synthesis and what the study calls the public health mandate. When you take everything, the global surge, the wild swings between countries, the social disparities, what's the one conclusion we're forced to accept?
The conclusion is it's pretty definitive. Given the huge increase in pain and all these variations we've been talking about, the authors argue that pain has to be treated as a population-level public health issue. It just can't be left to individual doctors and individual patients anymore.
It needs a response like we'd have for an epidemic.
That's a great way to put it, and this data is basically a roadmap for that response. It helps us identify the targets.
Okay, so let's name those targets.
Well, we now know that places with high prevalence and high disparity are the emergency zones. So France, in 2016, with its nearly 60% prevalence, has a scale problem. South Korea, in 2016, with its huge disparity index, has an equity problem. Those are two different crises, and they need two different strategies.
And on the flip side, we have the models to learn from. Denmark, for equity.
And China, with that massive 6.60-point reduction, offers a model for cutting overall prevalence and doing it on a huge scale.
It really provides the data to back up something that feels intuitive but is often ignored, that the roots of this are social and geographical.
If you want to tackle this 12-point surge that's hitting most of the world, you have to address the social determinants of health. You just have to.
It's the evidence needed to push policymakers to see this as a structural issue, not just a biological one. And that brings us to our final provocative thought for today.
Let's go back to those counter trends for a second.
Okay, so we saw that while the whole world was basically drowning in a rising tide of pain, Sweden managed to stabilize or even reverse its internal inequalities, and China achieved that staggering 6.5-point reduction overall. These are just monumental successes.
Truly incredible achievements when you look at the global backdrop.
So here is the thought for you to take away, built entirely on this data. What fundamental differences in public health, in social safety nets, or in, I don't know, community care priorities allowed Sweden and China to successfully push back against this global trend, while most other developed nations just watch their own pain crises get deeper and deeper?
That paradox right there. The fact that some nations can succeed against what seems inevitable, that's where the lessons are. Lessons the rest of the world urgently needs to learn.
They certainly do. Thank you for sharing these sources with us for this deep dive. We really hope you take these findings and keep exploring what they mean in your own context.